When I look back the last 5 years, we see a lot of changes in design. We see downscaling in terms of information, so being more precise, more targeted. So it would be easy to say that's also going to happen in the next 5 years. But to be honest, I think also with all the developments in AI, I think this will really disrupt how we look at websites.
Welcome to the Science Marketer Podcast, where we dive into how science-driven companies can communicate and market more effectively. Today, we're talking about websites and how life sciences companies should develop them. In an industry where credibility, trust, and clarity are everything, a website is often the first impression for investors, partners, or talent. But what makes a life sciences website truly stand out? To answer that, I'm joined by Maurice van Rotterdam, the founder of Sciential, a digital marketing agency specializing in life sciences. In this episode, we'll explore what makes a killer website, the biggest mistakes to avoid, and how to build something that not only looks good, but works strategically for your growth. So hi, Maurice. Welcome to the Science Marketer Podcast.
Thank you, Joachim, and really pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. Really looking forward to this episode.
Great. So let's start with a question of background. Can you briefly introduce yourself for the audience and your agency, Sciential?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have a scientific background. So I studied biomedical sciences in the University of Leiden, did a specialization in tumor immunology. So I worked in the lab, did some work on cancer research, found it really fascinating, but also found out that the lab itself wasn't really my thing. So shifted more towards the commercial side of life sciences. Did some consulting, and then actually there I found my passion in marketing. Well, from my side, there are actually two things that I really enjoy or that I'm very passionate about in marketing. It's on the one side, translating difficult or really technical information into easy understandable information. And the other side, I think that's what currently keeps me running is how you can activate people. So that's currently really everything that on top of my mind. So that was also the reason why, together with the two other co-founders, we started Sciential. That's now 4.5, almost 5 years ago. So we're a life science and health digital marketing agency. So we help companies within the life science sector with everything related to marketing. So that could be branding, that could be web developments, advertisements, content creation, preparation for events, those kind of things. To elaborate a little bit more, we're currently 30 people. We're based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Most of our clients are, of course, based in Europe. We also have some clients in the US and in Asia. And to give you a little bit of an indication, the type of clients we mainly serve are service providers in the pharma outsourcing niche. So really CROs, that could be preclinical research, but also clinical, and also CDMO companies. Those are, the most of the companies that we actually help. Of course, we also help some smaller companies, so biotech startups, biotech innovators in that case. Yeah, I hope that's a long introduction maybe, but I hope it gives a good overview.
Great, great overview. And so today we will talk about one of your services, which are building websites. And we will focus on this topic as you have a lot of experience in this field. So let's start with a question about websites in particular. And so in your opinion, what makes websites in the life sciences space unique compared to other industries?
Yeah, of course, if you compare it really to fast retail goods or those kind of industries, it's completely different, right? What I usually see in our sector, or what is really, really important, is that there's a lot of technology involved. There are multiple kind of buyers or people that are visiting the website. So there are multiple types of audiences that visit the website. So that makes it super complex. Also, if you compare it to other industries, the buying journey of a potential client, and forgive me, but most of my story today will be focusing on CDMOs or CROs. So having a look from their perspective on their websites, are really commercial companies that provide a service or a product in our market. So in that case, I think it makes it really complicated because you have multiple people visiting the website. They all need a specific kind of information in specific types of in their buyer journey. So that makes it quite difficult to get everything together and don't create an overflow of information and create 100 pages that nobody actually visits. I think that's something that is completely different than when you look at, for example, smartphone cases or those kind of things.
I totally agree. I think it's hard because you have to translate complex science in different levels of complexity over the website. Like you have to be generalists and at the same time go deep in some of the pages. And this complexifies a bit the case.
Yeah. And also like it's also worldwide, right? So you actually have different
Yeah.
languages and also you have different personas. So we will probably touch upon that a little bit later. But if you're targeting the US, well, we learned also based on the data that, well, US website visitors have a little bit a slightly different kind of user experience than European visitors in that sense. So all those things, of course, that also happens in other markets, but it is specifically important in our market as well.
What are the biggest mistakes you see life sciences companies making with their website?
Yeah. Well, I think we can actually have a separate podcast about this topic. We see, well, to be honest, I think if we go back when we started 5 years ago, just the three of us in our small broom closet here in Rotterdam, at that moment things were really going wrong in terms of websites. Nowadays, we see, I need to say, a lot of nice websites, also websites that are not developed by us. So I need to give credits there. But I think one of the most things that stands out or really pops into mind is undervaluing the importance of your website. From my perspective or our perspective, if I really look at our belief or our vision at marketing, the website is really the nucleus of the whole marketing strategy. So whether you run a campaign on Google, run a campaign on LinkedIn, if you go to an event, everyone is actually coming together at the website. And it also needs to translate people in their buyer journey actually every time they actually visit the website. Undervaluing the website in general, I think that's the most important things. We just have a website. It looks like 1990. Well, it is there. It works. That's basically the biggest one. To get a little bit more into detail, I think it all starts with the audience. A lot of companies, they're developing the website from their point of view, especially when I'm looking at CROs and CDMOs. They're of course like experts in their service, but they don't dive into the target audience. So I think it's also important. This is basically how we build also our websites is I first need to understand the three important things of a website. So that's what I would advise is understanding the audience. That's the first thing you need to understand. So is it healthcare professionals? Is it CEOs of biotech companies? Are it senior scientists of biotech companies? Are those investors? Is it maybe PE firms that you want to attract when you're a CDMO? All these things, you need to keep that in mind and translating that in UX design. I think that's the second thing. So, yeah, making sure that people can navigate over the website. Especially what I see is that a lot of the service providers, preclinical CROs, they have a technology and they have a service, and combining that is super difficult. So UX design is one of the most important things. And maybe to close off with another one that I also see quite often is too much information. So it's like pages of, I don't know, infinite scroll, I would say, of information, and it's not working. Of course, you could say it is for SEO, but to be honest, it's also not positively impacting your SEO score, I can tell. Those are the three things that we see mainly going wrong. Not focusing on the audience, looking at UX design, and then too much information and a lot of jargon. So a lot of things that are common as if you're a CDMO, but maybe not if you're, I don't know, senior scientist at a biotech company that is exploring maybe to outsource part of their business. So that's maybe three things that I see going on quite often.
When a life sciences company approaches you to start working on a new website, what's the very first step you take with them?
Yeah. Actually, I really like to have like standardized processes. So at Sciential, we have got a lot of standardized processes. Also, when I have, for example, like an introduction meeting with a client that is maybe into revamping their website, I first want to understand their business case. So for me, there are three things super important to understand. First of all, is their services. The second thing is really who's their core audience, and then not just saying, yeah, all of the scientists or all of the CEOs of biotech companies. It should be a little bit more defined in that sense. And of course, the competition, because then I can also see like, hey, is this a specific niche? How is the competition doing? Is it like, I don't know, top-notch websites? Then I can also give advice, right? Because sometimes it's also the advice to not make it too difficult, to keep it simple in that sense. So in that case, that's from my side, the first step, understanding who they are. So what they sell to who and who we're competing against towards together, because that's what I want to understand. And then from there, before I can actually give advice on how the website should look or actually think about design even, what we do is we analyze the current website. So of course, there's always a website. Well, 99% of the times there is already a website. So what we do is we have like our analysis package using analytics or Matomos, using Hotjar, using Microsoft Clarity, we analyze the current website, which pages are frequently viewed, which has the highest bounce rates, what are the ways how people can convert, really getting that all mapped out, making sure that we have a general understanding of the current website. And then from there, we could build a case. And what we do there is we develop like a recommendation report, which is quite a detailed report on our strategy, saying, hey, this is basically the most important pages. They're now orchestrated like this. This would be our suggestion because it makes sense. And this is how the competition is doing it. So in that case, that is basically how we onboard, or how I, yeah, before actually thinking about the whole project or anything, first looking at those two kind of elements. So their business model and what's currently out there. Then from there, we can actually pinpoint a point on the horizon where we actually want to go together.
Yeah, sounds good. Like you do an audit basically of the current website and you build from this.
Yeah, sometimes there's nothing there, right? So it's just one
Yeah.
page or something, and then it's difficult. But most of the times there is already like a website, and then what what really fascinates me is the data. Like you have pages that, well, they say these are really the most important pages of our website, and then you actually see that nobody actually visited them because you need to click 7 times before you can actually access that specific landing page. This should be only 3 clicks away because that's the maximum. Those things, it is quite confronting, and it's also quite interesting because then you can really learn how you can optimize the website, maybe with some simple steps, except for building a complete new website in that sense. So that's not always the case.
So let's talk about this, like the user journey on a website. What are the biggest mistakes you see in user journey and how do you fix them?
Yeah. So I think already mentioned it earlier, is like having the different kind of buyer personas or website visitors in mind. That could also be different kind of locations on the world. So it could be like you have a specific buyer persona or like a variation of a specific kind of persona. That could be like a European, US, or maybe like Asian Pacific. So in that case, really understanding why specific people actually come to the website. Then you can actually focus, of course, on the UX design itself. Because what we see going wrong is that, as I mentioned, the important pages, they're really, you need to click 7 times before you access them. So if I look really at the UX design, where it usually goes wrong is having those buyer personas in mind. And then the second thing where a lot of companies struggle or is that they have a technology and they have a service. So for example, there's CRO company, let's say for example, and they have like a platform technology. So they want to explain the technology. And the other side, they also want to explain, for example, the service that they do as a contract research organization. And putting that all together in one page or one website, that is quite difficult because when you enter the website, like the first header or hero, it should be clear that you can read about the technology, for example, for scientists. And the other side, maybe for the C executive roles, that they really understand, hey, why should I do business with them, or why should I outsource basically my work to them? So those are the most important things for CROs. And for CDMOs, I think there's a good example. If you go to a standard kind of website of CDMO, you see thousands of services. They're all mapped together. You have a menu. You go to the menu and then you like it bursts open and you have like target areas. You have different kind of models. Everything is coming together. I think that's very difficult to to centralize that in terms of UX. So yeah, I think that's a long
Like, do
answer
you
to the
have any
question.
ways? Like, is there any ways that you found helpful for this kind of complexity?
Yeah, so of course it remains difficult, right? This is the reason why actually companies hire us because then we have a team, for example, of UX designers that together with our life science specialists really dive into these buyer personas. Like, hey, let's say, and also based on the analysis that we did before, like what are the most important pages? How can we make sure that we define those and they are actually on top layers so they can be easily accessible? So in that case, some examples are, for example, the menu types that you can use, but also on the homepage you have different sections you can maybe scroll through. Or one of the things I'm really a big fan of this is that you have above your normal header, you have like a subheader saying researcher, investor, or C-level executive, because then you can just click on it and then you have a menu specifically for your person, yeah, your buyer persona. So it could really help because there's a 90% chance when you're a scientist, you want to first understand the technology, before you actually want to see like, hey, some case studies or those kind of things. I think those are some simple examples.
So many biotech companies struggle with balancing scientific detail and accessibility. What's your approach to this?
Yeah. Super relevant question. Of course, like from our side, we mainly help the service provider. So we have a little bit more expertise in that specific field. But if I look at biotechnology companies, they of course they want to pitch their technology, right? So they really need to go into depth. From my perspective, I still would say to keep it super simple on the website and maybe have like a specific portal where people that have an access to this specific portal, they can read more. Because to be honest, when you're looking at a biotech company, I could say that for most of the biotech companies, their target audience is investors, other research partners, or maybe like government institutions providing grants, those kind of things. It's like a mandatory thing that you have a website at least. So these three kind of audiences, they visit the website. And of course, you want to get in contact with the investor. So if you're of course having a name, you're making a name for yourself. You have a super simple website. You can always make like a kind of like portal based kind of part. So they need to reach out before they can actually learn more. Of course, it should be really on the edge of teasing so people reach out because putting all the information there, I think that's what most of the companies do. They have like very extensive pages, like I mentioned, like infinite scrolls with information. Try to stay away from it and only provide all that information when you know that people are really looking for it. Because that's also how you keep your website clean. I think for 90% of the cases, I would delete half of the pages of biotech companies, actually. So that's basically the answer. All the scientific content gated on a specific kind of partner portal or something. So when people are really interested, they can access it because it should be accessible, right? But only if you have like, that's for investors. Maybe on a side note, for CDMOs and CROs, I'm a big fan of non-gated content. But that's maybe a different story. But if you're a biotech company, then you need to spark the interest of the investor. Right?
Let's talk a bit about design now. So how do you strike the right balance between making a website visually appealing while also keeping it professional and credible, especially in a scientific environment like life sciences?
Yeah, it's a very thin line, I would say, and it also really it really depends on our client. So of course we have like a UX design team, we have a web development team, so we could really go out of the box. But I know that in our industry, a little bit conservative, I could say. So in that case, if we compare it, I think it's a good question. Referring back to your first question, what's different? So our websites are a little bit more conservative, and that's also okay. Also in terms of design, we're a little bit more conservative because it's really it's scientific information. It's very serious business that we're actually trying to sell, right? So in that case, that also resonates. From our side, of course, there are some influences from other industries that we can see. And there is a balance between like these super ultimate kind of tech kind of websites. Maybe that's the best way to describe that you scroll through it and that everything is animating and that these things fly in. To be honest, I think it's not really working in our industry. It's also something that we already cover in our first meeting, so the kickoff meeting, saying, "Hey, this is the audience. Is this a scientist that is really looking to outsource their most precious kind of experiment, like a proof of concept study? Do they want to outsource it to something really flashy or a little bit more like conservative and really all the information there and like simple design?" So we recently also launched a website from a Berlin company that we're working for. It is really on the edge. So it's super scientific, it's super sharp, but it's not flashy. So I think that's the main part. So don't put glitter and glamour on it, but it should be like nowadays, right? To be honest, I see a lot of companies trying to go for really the Apple kind of websites. I think it's a little bit difficult to get all our information because we have so much menus, we have so much information that we put onto it. I think that's difficult. So that's also something that we keep in mind. And in terms of design, I think you really need to stand out. You can't use standard stock images anymore. I would highly recommend to invest a little bit more in, hiring a professional photographer, videos, short videos, some like photos of the whole team, make it uniform from the whole company. And I can imagine, right, if you're a CDMO, you cannot take pictures of the bioreactors and the whole facilities. But of course, there's always possibilities, especially because in the end, especially in our business, the decisions whether to go for company A or B is really based on personal kind of like connections, and it's really about the people behind the brand, right? So in the end, CDMOs, you can select four. In the end, they all do the same. And I think we learned quite recently from a report from Simon Kucher, which was presented during CDMO Live here in Rotterdam early this year, that there are specific elements that well, biotech companies they look at when they're looking at selecting the right partner. So if you can give your company really a face, and also a face that resonates with how your company culture is, then I think that's something that you can put in the design as well. So if it's really playful and those kind of things, that's really how you could resonate. And usually what we do, 90% of the times we actually develop a website. We also try to revamp a little bit the brand itself because, for example, we see quite some trends into going into more gradients. So a lot of gradients are used, and of course some small animations, those kind of things that you need to integrate it. But then you should first adapt a little bit the brand, because otherwise you have very nice gradients in your website, and then you go to a conference and you use a brochure that was developed 2 years ago with like a solid kind of color. So those kind of things, it's also something to take in mind, right? When you're developing a new website, that maybe have a look. Don't change everything. Don't change the whole logo and everything, but just, I know, spicing up the brand a little bit. I think that's a good thing. Bringing it up to 2025. Usually we see that design wise, brand wise, 4 to 5 years, and then you need maybe a little bit of sparkle again to get it up to speed with the current brand. Maybe a long answer to your question, but I think it
Great
answers it.
answer. You're already answering several questions at the same time. But it's great, and it's as a side way. So I recorded another episode recently with Base Bio, and they did a rebranding in addition to a website redesign. And we were discussing this, and of course, it's the best decision you can make. So the effort is a bit bigger, but then you don't have to go back later to updating your logo or vice versa. And basically, you come with a full package of rebranding for everything: your brochures, your events, roll-ups, everything, and you have the same identity everywhere, and this creates consistency. So yeah, I totally agree with your advice. It's a good choice.
Thanks.
So do you have an example of maybe a client project you can mention? You don't have to say the name, but maybe just explain the project where good UX and design made a measurable difference for their business.
Yeah, I could actually mention two, because we also developed case studies that I share with our clients and potential clients. So I can mention them. So one of them is also one of my favorite clients. It's 3D Histech. They're actually a company from Hungary, and I met them a couple of years back at Medica. And the interesting thing is they supply specific software and also really the equipment for histology and those kind of like analysis. They actually, we came in contact, and their biggest kind of challenge was they wanted to have a converting website. So at that moment, it was like a little bit of an old fashioned website, I think developed somewhere at 2000, something like that. So what we did is we wrote a whole plan on how we could use UX design, and also not only UX design of the homepage, right? But also like you have these specific pages, that you know that those are the most important pages of the website, because most of the people, they will go for that specific product, or they will go for specific things. So what we did is, for the specific landing pages, we developed multiple A/B kind of tests and checked how we could, for example, optimize lowering the barriers of filling in a form, because eventually sales is always asking for new leads and contact form fill-ins. To be honest, there are a lot of other things that you can do to lower the barriers to let people connect with you. So that, good example is, for example, like a calendar invite form on the website. You can directly schedule a call with an expert, for example. In those ways, you can also lower the barrier to conversions. And in that case, we could actually multiply the amount of leads in the first half year after the launch of the website by 4. So before the website, and now it's like 4 times more. So maybe good to mention, and I already mentioned it earlier, I'm a big fan of non-gated content. So all the content is still ungated, but there are quite some smart tactics how you could convert website visitors into potential conversations. I try to avoid the word leads, rather call it conversations. Another company that we work for, also one of my favorite actually, is Insvero. It's a Swiss company, very famous for their organ on the chip technology. So a couple years ago, I met them, and also they wanted to rebrand and also do a new website. And there were a couple of things that were very important when we starting developing the website. One of them was the loading speed. So their previous website was quite slow, and the other one was visibility of their main keywords. So together also with SEO experts, we developed a whole new website, and we really focused on SEO. So in that case, we could also increase their visibility of their specific keywords with more than 50%. So they actually showed up more in search engines like Bing and Google. So that's also something that we did. So it's on the one side more like a kind of design wise, and the other part is more like the Insvero example is more like a technical part, I would say. And now you could also expand that, for example, with GEO. So that's basically how you could appear in large language models like Copilot and ChatGPT. It is currently one of the hottest topics. A lot of people are actually reaching out, like, "Hey, how can we end up in large language models?" Yeah, that's currently quite a topic.
We should do an episode about this maybe next time. But the technical side also is interesting. So what technical aspects are the most critical?
Yeah, so really at the back end, try to keep things as simple as possible. From our side, we're a big fan of the combination between WordPress and Elementor. There are a couple of reasons for it. The most important reason is it's the most frequently used combination worldwide. And that is for the reason that it is super user friendly. So we can develop something non-coded, and our clients, they can actually, when we launch the website, we can develop specific templates so they can work, for example, on creating an event page themselves, a vacancy, or I don't know, blog page themselves. That is super important that when you're actually looking for a new website, whether it's with us or with another agency, that after the launch, you can do also basic things yourself. I think that's the most important thing when you're a marketer and looking for a new website. Because if you always need to call your marketing agency for help, I wouldn't say that that's a good thing. So that's one of the most important things, really looking from a marketer perspective. Really on a technical level, I think, making sure that you check all boxes in terms of mobile friendliness. Make sure that you check all boxes on loading speed, for example, usability on different kind of devices I mentioned. Of course, when you're thinking about ranking well in Google or other search engines, there's this unofficial checklist of things that you should take into consideration. Also, like, for example, specific image formats. This is a very basic thing, but image formats that they shouldn't be PNG, but like other different formats like Web3 formats, because then the loading speed increases. So all these things, they in a technical form, they should align. One of the things we see often going wrong when we do the analysis, because during the analysis, before we actually pitch or we develop like an idea of how to develop a new website, we see a lot of plugins. Like everyone is installing plugins, and it really slows down your website. Another thing is website hosting. I think also something that is quite often overlooked or underlooked, so really undervalued. Because let's say we have a biotech company or like a CRO together, and most of our clients are in the US, but well, then we find out that our website doesn't load fast in the US just because we have a server that is not suitable for US. It happens quite often. So those are all the technical parts that you really need to make sure that they are covered.
If a company has limited budget, let's say, early stage biotech company who wants to start, what do you recommend for them if they cannot hire an agency, or what's the options they have?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, most of our clients are, of course, the commercial companies, but we also help biotech companies really in their early phases. And I could only give them one advice, which is really keep it super simple. So I would recommend only one page. So if it's really a biotech startup, I know you have like maximum 10 people in the team. One page is more than enough. Keep it really simple. Don't burn too much resources on the website. It should look good. It should be super straightforward. Everything could be on one page. Some of the technology partners, some of the team pictures in there, and some other things that they can actually visit. That's all you need. Maybe like the portal that I mentioned. We developed a couple of those websites. For us, it's really, That's what I would recommend. Super simple. You don't need more, I would say. What's your vision on that, Joachim? Because of course you also work more with startups as well, right? So,
I think it has to look good. That's important more than we think,
uh
because you see a lot of companies or, even the CEO trying to do it themselves.
my nephew can create a website.
Yeah, exactly. But then it ends up just being not looking good. And it might then create some issues when an investor connects to the website and want to learn more. They may miss opportunities just because of this
Yeah,
and because they undervalue the aesthetic of a website, which is normal also for someone maybe who is focusing more on science. But see, I think the look is very important. As you said, like keeping it simple is very important. So yeah, maybe like even investing more efforts into the brand
yeah,
identity
mm,
more than the website,
yeah.
because then it's quite easy.
To be honest, I couldn't agree more. So I mentioned, right, I did consulting in the past more for like grant writing and then venture capital, and I could really see a difference between companies that had their brands well sorted out and companies that I know they were light blue, gray, and white. I would say that's always a joke I make. Yeah, it's really if you stand out, if you have a good story, it's also like if you're pitching, for example, your pitch deck. If it's all uniform, you see that it has like well, you actually send the message that you're super professional and really take this serious, right? And it's also underestimated. It's more difficult to make something simple than keeping things really like I don't know exploding in terms of information. So of course you need to spend quite some time on it, but in the end the brand and the message, like the positioning, those kind of things. It's very important that you get that across because you only have one chance, right? If an investor lands on your website, it doesn't load or it doesn't load well on your iPhone. This investor say, yeah, well, yeah, okay,
Next one.
next one. Yeah, sure.
So last question, how do you see life sciences website evolving over the next 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah, it's, I think, a very difficult question to answer. I think when I look back the last 5 years until now, we see a lot of changes in design. We see downscaling in terms of information. So being more precise, more targeted. So that's what we see in the last 5 years. So it would be easy to say that's also going to happen in the next 5 years. But to be honest, I think also with all the developments in AI, I think this will really disrupt how we look at websites. So, for example, in terms of UX design, it could also be that, and we're trying to implement that already in some of our clients' websites, is that you have like a menu where you can just, I don't know, ask questions to a specific agent on the website, and it's going to answer based on the database that is behind it. So, those kind of things, that's what we see. It's more tailored towards the specific audience itself. So, those are more featured based. But of course, still the most important thing of the website or in the marketing strategy should be the website in that sense. Besides that, I think what is also important is the fact of data analysis. It's going to be more important to analyze like, hey, this specific part of the website is not working. This is how we're going to optimize it. It will be more important to do more updates over time. Do you have some expectations from your side, maybe?
No, I think you mentioned the AI. I think that's an interesting aspect. And like you, I don't know, but I think it will go in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Because as you said, like if you look at the last 5, 10 years,
Hmm.
the websites in life sciences, they have like gained
Yeah.
3 generations
Yeah. No, definitely.
because they were maybe lagging behind, but now you start seeing some really nice websites. There are also really great web development teams like yours, like others as well, who are doing an amazing job. So yeah, it's becoming much more modern, pleasing to the eye. And I expect this to keep going, basically, like seeing more and more websites that look better.
I think if you're currently like a CDMO or CRO, then this is actually the right moment to jump on the train because if you're now the first one implementing an AI agent that could, for example, or like a chat on your website with all the information in there, you could really uh, be a front runner, right? So then you can have the advantage of being the first because in the end it will really disrupt. It's also something that we see for some of our clients. I already mentioned it earlier, like in terms of ending up in search engines or the one that you end up in large language models. We see quite a difference in spent time on the website from people that land directly from a large language model. They spend much more time than when someone reaches their website from Google. So how we're going to use the website in general I think is going to be different, because you're going to, all the basic information you will probably find out via the large language models, but then the more in-depth questions you could ask in the website itself. So I think that that's really something that also from my end, I'm really looking forward to it, because if you look at the buying process in pharma outsourcing, most of the people, or there's like, it takes like 5 to 6 years actually to really select, right? Let's say you're about a company and you start and you I know, you go to CPHI, by Europe, you meet all these people, and then you get a top 3 or top 5. And then from that moment, you have them in mind, and you should stay top of mind as a service provider of
Mm.
all these people that might be your client in the future. I think when you actually use your website in a way that is currently possible, then it's also more easy to end up in that kind of top 3, because you can provide all the information. You're the one that can actually provide all the answers to the questions they have, and that builds trust, right? Because in the end, it's all based on trust. So if you have something on your website, or the usability of your website is far more optimal than from your competitors, then you have the advantage of building the trust online, except for only the events where you can shake hands, drink a beer, and have a good time and have a very good conversation. But I think it's, well, with AI joining the game, I think websites and other online platforms will be more dominant in how buyers will buy in our industry, I would say. So it will also change not only the website, but really how we buy in our industry.
Yeah, great point to conclude the podcast. Thanks a lot for joining.
Nice. Thanks for the fun questions, Joachim. It's really a pleasure. It's really great, right? It's such a topic. I think we could continue for hours
Yes,
about the
I have
topic,
to stop.
but it's really interesting. So yeah, that's good. Nice. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any updates. And for even more content on science, marketing, and communication, be sure to sign up to my newsletter at thesciencemarketer.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.